Good evening, and welcome to the regular session of council for the municipality of Bayham. It is Thursday, October the 3rd, 2024, 7 p.m., and I will call this meeting to order. Remind members of disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Section 3, review of items not listed on the agenda.
There's no items tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on with Section 4, announcements. Any announcements this evening? Councilor Chilcott.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind everyone that this Friday night, the Watermelon Fest Stratfordville Community Committee will be holding a bingo that starts at 7 p.m. It's a Thanksgiving bingo. Kids are free with a paying adult, and there will be prizes for both kids and adults. So hope everyone can attend.
Thank you for that. Chief Baranick, please come to the podium and make your announcement.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple announcements. The first one is next week is the beginning of our Fire Prevention Week across North America. This week's theme is smoke alarms, make them work for you. This includes such things as realizing that every floor in your house should have a working smoke alarm. Every area where there's a bedroom should have a working smoke alarm. And if your house is built after 2015, you should have a working smoke alarm with a strobe light attached to it. If the smoke alarm is more than 10 years old, replace it. That's how long they last for. And you should be checking it monthly. Along with with this Fire Prevention Week, your fire department will be attending the public schools. The Stratfordville, Colton, and Corinth School will be attended on Tuesday. That'll be followed by an open house at the Stratfordville station Tuesday night between 7 and 8:30 p.m. And then on the Wednesday, the gospel on Plank, Lighthouse, and Port Burwell Public School will be attended again by the firefighters. And also they will have an open house that night between 6 and 8 p.m. So again, I urge everybody to ensure that they have working smoke alarms. That truly is still the #1 cause of fire deaths in Ontario. And at the same time, Your Worship, if I may continue with another matter.
Yep.
Your Worship, as you know, today we attended the Legend Rubber open house today. They invited us to attend, and they donated a $2,500 check to the Bayham Fire Department. I think for their actions that we had with their I am honored, and the one thing I did tell them was that this fire was truly a team approach. I kind of made the joke that it was a good practice. We were able to practice with our other brothers and sisters. We never know how something like this is how it's gonna turn out when you have so many fire departments involved and you're all working for the same cause. But this one turned out very well and was very quick to extinguish. And I was grateful for everybody that assisted. And with that, Your Worship, thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Chief. Thomas.
Just one quick announcement that the municipal office will be closed on Monday, October the 14th in observation of Thanksgiving Monday.
Okay. Anything else from anyone? All right, for members of council regarding next week with the Fire Prevention Week, if you have an opportunity, I would encourage you to at least drop in and visit the open houses at the fire stations. It's always a good idea, you know, at least periodically just to drop in, show your support for our volunteers, and I know that they would certainly appreciate it. So I'll leave that with you. So we are now dropping down to section 7, adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting. They include the regular meeting minutes of council held September the 19th, as well as the statutory planning meeting on the same date. Any errors or omissions, please let them know. Seeing none, I would entertain a mover and seconder for the following, that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held September the 19th, 2024, and the minutes of statutory planning meeting held September the 19th, 2024 be approved as presented. Deputy Mayor Weiser will move. Counselor Chilcott will second. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Like we're skipping way down to section 12. Development Services, Sustainability and Conservation, 12.1 correspondence, and 12.1.1 to receive for information. 4 items. Item A, notice of decision regarding the minor variance application A 0424 Sawatsky Friesen. Item B, notice of decision regarding minor variance application A 1624 Clark Sullivan. Item C, notice of decision regarding minor variance application A 1724 Clausen. And item D, notice of public meeting regarding proposed official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, municipality of Bayham. Does anyone have any questions or concerns regarding any of these items? Seeing none, I'll entertain a mover and seconder for the following, that items 12.1.1A through D be received for information. Mover and seconder, Councillor Chilcott and Deputy Mayor Weiser, all in favor? That's carried. 12.2 reports to council. We have item A, report DS 7224 by Margaret Underhill, planning coordinator, deputy clerk, regarding the rezoning application ZBA 2224 Rose at 55210 Maple Grove Lawn. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, your worship and council. The report before you is for consideration of a rezoning application for Jesse and Sarah Froze, 55210 Maple Grove Line. The purpose of the amendment is to rezone their agricultural A1A parcel to a site-specific agricultural A1A 48 zone to permit an agricultural service establishment as an additional permitted use, limited to the storage and distribution of portable toilets to support agricultural operations in the surrounding area. The agricultural service establishment use would be limited to a maximum floor area of 280 square meters and would have outdoor storage restricted to the rear yard. The effect of the bylaw would be to allow for them to store and distribute portable toilets as a business to support agricultural operations in our area. Public meeting was held on September the 19th with no attendees and no oral or written public submissions. So the planner's memorandum dated September 11th is attached to the report, and it provides a full analysis of the application against the Provincial Policy Statement 2020, our proposed Provincial Planning Statement 2024, Elgin County OP and our Bayham OP and our zoning bylaw. Staff and planner concur that the rezoning application meets the policies and recommends approval to change the zoning. And it would again allow for an agricultural service establishment and would limit the floor area and limit the outdoor storage to the rear yard. And I leave it with you, your worship, for questions.
Thank you very much for that report. Does council have any questions or concerns regarding this application? Okay, seeing none, we have a proposed motion that reads a report DS 7224 regarding the Froze rezoning application ZBA 2224 be received for information. And that pursuant to the Planning Act Regulations Bill 73, Smart Growth for Our Communities Act 2015, it be pointed out that at the public participation meeting held September the 19th, 2024, associated with this application, there were no attendees and no oral or written submissions received regarding this matter, and that all considerations were taken into account in council's decision passing this resolution, and that zoning bylaw number Z 456/2003 as amended be further amended by changing the zoning on a property located in part lots 14 and 15 concession 8, known municipally as 55210 Maple Grove Line, from agricultural A1A to site-specific agricultural A1-A-48 zone to permit an agricultural service establishment as an additional permitted use, limited to the storage and distribution of portable toilets and shall be limited to a maximum floor area of 280.0 square meters. That's 3,013.8 square feet. And an outdoor storage shall be limited to the rear yard. And its zoning bylaw Z 791/2024 be presented to council for enactment. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? I see Councillor Chilcott and Councillor Froze will second. All in favor? And that is carried. Item B, report DS 7324 by Margaret Underhill, Planning Coordinator, Deputy Clerk, regarding consent application E7924 Hildebrandt, H&E at 56092 Heritage Line. Marg?
Thank you, Your Worship. This report through you to council is regarding a consent application E7924 submitted by Gerard Dyke on behalf of the landowners Heinrich and Elizabeth Hildebrandt. They're proposing to sever a portion of their property to add to their neighbor's property as a lot addition. The parcel would be approximately 900 square meters, and it would merge on title with the lands to the west, municipally known as 56088 Heritage Line. And they would retain approximately 1,900 square meters of land. The purpose is to expand the rear yard and increase the lot area of the neighboring property. The Elgin County Land Division Committee will consider this application on October the 23rd. The planner's memorandum dated August the 28th is attached to the report, and it analyzes the application subject to our own official plan and zoning bylaw. Standard conditions would apply, as in a digital copy of the survey, a letter of undertaking for lands to merge, and the planning report fee payable to the municipality upon the granting of the consent. In addition, the owner is required to remove the existing 2 sheds located on parcel A, the parcel to be severed, as a lot addition. We recommend support of the consent application for the addition to a lot with the recommended conditions. And I leave it with you, Your Worship, for questions.
Thank you very much for that report, Marg. Does anyone have any questions? Purely for edification of the gallery, can you explain why the sheds are to be removed on the severed parcel?
Through you to the council and the gallery, but the sheds are accessory buildings and they belong to the owner of the property that is severing the property. So they are to be removed so that the lands are clear and they can be added to the other property for the neighbor's use.
Thank you very much for that. Seeing no further questions, we have a proposed motion that reads that report DS 7324 regarding the consent application E7924 Hildebrandt be received. And that council recommend to the Elgin County Land Division Committee that consent application E79-24 be granted subject to the following conditions and considerations. Number 1, that the owner removes the existing 2 sheds located on parcel A to be severed as a lot addition to 56088 Heritage Line. Number 2, that the owner provides a digital copy of a survey of the subject lands. Number 3, that the owner provides a letter of undertaking from their solicitor for the lands to merge on title. And number 4, that the owner provides the planning report fee payable to the municipality of Bayham upon the granting of the consent by the Elgin County Land Division Committee. Anyone interested in moving and or seconding this? I see Councillor Emerson and I believe Deputy Mayor Weisler. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on down to section 13, Finance and Administration. 13.1, we have correspondence, and 13.11 to receive for information. Item A, City of Kitchener regarding changes to the Landlord Tenant Tribunal. Item B, Town of Tillsonburg regarding cellular coverage concerns. Item C, from the municipality of Tweed regarding the Canada Community Building Funds. And item D, County of Brant regarding the Southwest Community Transit funding. And item E, Elgin County regarding the September 10th, 2024 County Council highlights. Does anyone have any questions, concerns regarding any of these information items? Deputy Mayor Weiser.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would like to endorse item B from the town of Tillsonburg regarding cellular coverage. I know we've had this discussion multiple times and we all know the drop zones and dead zones that they're referring to in this report. So I would very much like to see that supported.
Thank you. Any other item? Would simply comment that the one from item D, County of Brant, Southwest Community Transit funding was considered at Elgin County and endorsed. Item C is an interesting one, the Canada Community Building Funds, which is previously known as the federal gas tax. Can't entice anyone's interest in any of those. Fair enough. All right, then I believe the clerk has a amended resolution for us.
That items 13.11A through E be received for information and that the Council for the Corporation of the Municipality of Bayham supports item B.
Mover and seconder for that. Counselor Chilcutt, Counselor Emerson will second. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Moving on to 13.12, requiring action. Item A from Debbie Marlette, a request for action to reform hall rental administration. Who has comments for that?
Your worship, I'll start with this.
Thank you.
So we have correspondence was received from Debbie Marlatt requesting council's attention on the administration of hall rentals. A summary was included for your consideration as the original correspondence was not suitable for the agenda and further revised versions were not received in time. The author believes that hall rentals to a specific group are not being charged properly from what is outlined in the rates and fees bylaw. A spreadsheet was submitted of her findings of rates charged versus rates outlined in the bylaw, noting a shortfall of about 16,000 from a few sample years. The information of the rental rates charged were obtained from a Freedom of Information request, which the author also notes concerns with the price to process the FOI request. With the belief that hall rentals are being charged inappropriately, the author outlines 6 requests for action that are included in the summary for your consideration. Staff have been back and forth with this author for months on this perceived issue, and a meeting with the CAO was recommended to the author to discuss her interpretations of the rental rates, and it was denied. So I will pass it to Thomas to provide some clarity.
Thank you, Megan. Just some clarification on a few points. So FOI fees are not something that the municipality has any sort of jurisdiction over. Fees are under MFIPA, specifically the regulation under MFIPA that dates back to 1990. So we are beholden to those fees. So that's not something that we control. The next point regarding the rental fees. So we've been in discussion with the SHF over these fees for the better part of the last, I would say, 5 or 6 months. We've had a few different meetings to discuss these. I think the correspondence comes forward because there is some lack of clarity around the fee that would apply for rental for the hall that isn't for a full day. So this is really a discrepancy between a 3-hour rental or a 4-hour rental versus a full day rental. Full day rental is approximately $275. A 3-hour rental at this point in time, I believe we're charging $150. So there is obviously a discrepancy there. But based on our discussions with the SHF and the application of the fees in the context of our rates and fees bylaw, a full day rental is unreasonable because they are not renting the facility for a full day. Individuals could theoretically rent the facility in the morning or the early afternoon, and then it would be used for other purposes in the evening. So we believe that the fees that have been applied to these rentals are sufficiently within the latitude and authority granted to the SHF as our facility managers. For some context, These are essentially historic fees that have been honored since, based upon my records, at least 2016. So the vendor in question previously rented both the SCC and the Vienna Community Center dating back to 2016. And based on those rental fees, were charged $80 to $90 for a similar period of time. Currently, after the community discount, they're charged $100. And it's worth noting that the VCC, when we did own it and did rent it out, had a history of completely waiving fees for certain rentals. Eastern Star would be one. The Otter Valley Naturalist would be another. So applying a community discount to reduce the fee is similar to what the VCC would have been doing back in the late 2010s, and completely waiving fees that would have been, $30, $40, $50 for a rental. We do note that much of the disagreement and interpretation has arisen due to some vague language in the wording and the rates and fees and rental agreements. This has been identified with staff and the facilities manager. So we will be working with them in partnership to bring some amended wording forward to hopefully reduce some of this ambiguity. So with that, Mr. Mayor, that's the information that Megan and I can provide at this time. Should you and council have any questions, we're available.
All right, thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions or comment? Counselor Emerson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, one question, is there any of those rental periods, because the justification is that it could be rented out again in a day, are in such a time frame that it's impossible to rent out for another portion of the day? Like say, I don't know, from 3 to 6, and then it's not possible to rent it out again, and therefore maybe shouldn't be discounted. Just a question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Emerson. So the rentals in question generally are generally for Wednesday evenings. Setup is normally done either morning of or early afternoon, or depending on what the bookings look like, potentially the evening beforehand. As mentioned, the hall could theoretically be rented out the morning of or early afternoon with setup pushed later. There isn't enough time being utilized by this one vendor to preclude any other rentals on that day. We just generally don't have a lot of interest for morning or early afternoon rentals in the middle of the week.
Okay, is that give
Oh,
you?
no, it's fine. I just want to make sure that a certain 3-hour period essentially ruins the rest of the day, I guess, apparently. So that's all I was thinking. And that explanation is, I guess, sufficient.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Counselor Chilcott?
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm, number 3 says equal access. Ensure that all community groups have equal access to hall rental opportunities and that no single group is given preferential treatment. I believe that all the groups are able to book the hall for that. They just haven't. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Chilcott. Not being a primary for the rentals, I can't specifically speak to what you're asking, but I'm not aware of any community group that's been denied the community discount if they've inquired and asked about it.
Thank you. So we are providing equal access.
Any other questions? Oh, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a clarification on number 5 with the public disclosure. I can see where we would have an issue with rental agreements if there's personal information on there, but does not the Hall Foundation or they provide financial reports on a yearly basis back to the municipality? Are those not available for public access?
I'm going to allow staff here to weigh in on it, but if you even look back into the budget process, look at actuals versus budget, though it doesn't necessarily talk to the number of rentals that take place, but it gives you a pretty good understanding on what the fees that came in from a revenue side. Is that not sufficient without violating, as you say, the confidentiality of a rental agreement of who's renting and when?
Mhm. Yeah.
I'll look to Thomas, or Megan to, add any clarity to that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to mention what you had mentioned about including it in the operating budget on an annual basis for, you know, what previous year actuals were versus budgeted amounts. I'd have to confirm with the treasurer regarding any additional reports.
All right, thank you for that. Of course, my experience with the halls would be back a few years prior to 2014 with the hall committees. And I know that we did not disclose particular rental agreements to the general public.
That's right.
And I'm not aware of any particular reporting that went beyond the committee structure to council, other than through the budget process. Any other questions, comments? The takeaway that I'm getting so far is that there's an acknowledgement that there perhaps needs to be a little housekeeping item done on the policy, perhaps the rates and fees bylaw. Other than that, I'm not sure of any other action to be taken at this point. And I'm looking to council, see if they have anything that they would request to be done. Councilor Emerson? You're muted, sir.
Sorry, I didn't want to that's my cough mute. Hey, I just need some a comment about the Freedom of Information charges. They seem excessive and stand in the way of clarity in government, and there really is nothing we can do to make those charges so that people have more accessibility to Freedom of Information requests. It just seems it limits clarity. In general, not in this case in particular, but in general.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So the OREG that applies here for fees is 34 years old. So based upon discussions that I've had with other CAOs and clerks, and as a member of Legislative and Policy Advisory Committee for AMCTO, there is appetite to have those fees actually increased to be more indicative of the staff time and effort that has to go into this legislative process. We don't recover anywhere near cost on the amount of time that goes into FOIs for search, redaction, preparation of these sorts of documents. So there's a lot of belief out there that these fees are actually low and are not indicative of the amount of effort that truly goes into them. For some of the smaller FOI requests we do get, we do have discretion to waive fees for any FOI that can be processed for under a certain amount. And we often do that, but for these larger ones where staff effort is substantial, we have to issue fee estimates, and we have to, in some instances, collect deposits. So it's difficult for us to waive or reduced fees based upon the scope of some of the inquiries we get. And this happens to be one of the bigger ones.
Okay. Megan, please.
Through your worship, just to speak a little bit further for that too, for information. It depends as well when we speak about the amount of time of what record is being requested for our corporation. Is it something that's a physical record? Is it something that's digital? Is the request specific enough that it is just one item, or is the request vague, which will involve our IT team to do a full sweep of all corporate accounts? There's lots of different steps involved. So it really just comes down to what the request is. And we try and work with the people to narrow in the request so that it is a more of an affordable ask and still getting the information you're looking for.
Okay. Councilor Chilcott.
Thank you. I was just looking at number 6, deficit reduction plan. And I believe that that's already happening, is it not? We try to keep costs down. I don't know what else you could do except write it out.
More frequent rentals.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the object of the game, right?
Mhm.
We don't want to not have more rentals. And I don't believe that any reporting has been manipulated as suggested in this letter either, so.
I don't see that.
So
being
I
the
just,
case.
I think that staff is doing a good job at trying to, and so is the manager of the facilities of trying to keep everything going. So,
Well, specifically to that particular plan or the deficit reduction plan, if you will, if you consider the fact that in the absence of volunteers managing this facility, you would be paying a hall manager. And there would be a substantial cost to that relative to the income coming in. It's been my experience over the last 18 years that community centers don't make a profit.
they're not.
Most municipal servicing options out there never make a profit. If you have something that you're doing that's making you a profit, perhaps it should be in private hands and not left to municipal governments. Other than I would have to go and look to, I know in the past, and Marg, you're still sitting there, and I'm gonna pick on you. But in the past, we used to have a more of a marketing campaign advertising these halls out. Do we still engage in some kind of promotion for our facilities? And I don't believe we do. And that's the only thing that I can think of is if we were to actively get out and advertise, but there's a cost to that. That's contributing to the deficit. So it's cost of doing business. Deputy Mayor, keep in mind that we're soon gonna have to break for a public meeting.
Yeah, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick comment as well is council did provide direction as well, and we should be seeing that on the next budget cycle with the utilities and some of the concerns with how things were broken down. So I think if we're working towards firming up the language and also doing a real analysis of how the utility costs are identified and set up, I think you're gonna see a big change in profit versus expenses. So anyway, that's to come. So I'll look forward to that firming, the firming of the language as well. So
All right.
just a comment there.
Now, given the fact that staff have already identified that there is some housekeeping items going on, is there anything within a particular motion going forward that you think needs to be included? Have you included something?
I drafted some formal language about staff reviewing the language, just if we'd like to include it to have it there. So we have a proposed motion that reads that the correspondence summary from Debbie Marlatt regarding request for action to reform hall rental administration be received for information, and that staff be directed to review the language surrounding hall rentals during the next rates and fees review.
I don't find the motion to be out of order. I think it reflects accurately the discussion around the table.
So my apologies, Mr. Mayor. Could I just have Megan reread that one more time? Sorry, Megan.
Receive for information, and that staff be directed to review the language surrounding hall rentals during the next rates and fees review.
Housekeeping,
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor,
Next rates and fee review would be.
coming up.
We are planning to do it annually, so it's coming up at the end of the
Perfect.
year.
Thank you. I'll move.
All right. All right. Do we have a seconder for that? Counselor Chilcott will second. All in favor? Okay, that is carried. Thank you very much. We're going to now recess from our regular agenda in order to move into a public meeting. Okay. It is 7:34 and I'm going to call this statutory planning meeting to order. I'm going to remind members of any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. And the purpose of this evening's public meeting is to deal with a proposed official plan amendment, OPA 0324, and proposed zoning bylaw amendment, ZBA 2424, part of Snow Street, municipality of Bam. The purpose of this combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment is to designate the subject property to the residential land use designation and rezone the subject property from institutional zone to village residential 1 zone, that's R1 zone, to facilitate the creation of a new residential lot. The subject property, being an unopened road allowance, is legally identified as part of Snow Street, registered Plan 54 in the village of Vienna. The subject property is located immediately south of Ann Street. The effect of this combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment is to facilitate the creation of a future residential lot. And at this point, we are going to enter into a public participation phase, and anyone who wishes to speak to this proposed manner, please attend the podium, sign in. Or anyone virtually present who wishes to sign in and speak to the issue?
We do have one virtual member. If you can hear us and would like to go ahead, feel free.
Wendy?
Mhm.
She's muted.
Wendy, if you can hear us and want to unmute.
There we go. Okay,
Good
sorry.
evening.
Good evening. So I have hopefully seven salient points just to go through really quickly for you because I know you're stressed for time. The first one is, to date, there are no studies completed or tools identifying how many hectares should be assigned to 1,000 people. So there's no way of measuring or that I have found anywhere in the bylaws or even in the previous minutes to measure the amount of parkland that 1,000 people should have. So if we look at the World Health Organization, they recommend 1 to 1.5 hectares per 1,000 people. If we look at Toronto, they have between 2 to 2.5 hectares per 1,000 people. Guelph is not that far off either, as well as Oakville and London. Those are the ones that I reviewed. And Little St. Mary's has even had a strategic plan, and theirs is in place with their official plan with their parkland in terms of what they're doing. They have massive amounts of parkland. So I would encourage that we develop some sort of a committee or strategic plan. A lot of them have done it through assessment in terms of the community's interest in planning for parks and what they feel, as well as I think as Thomas mentioned at one time in terms of comparison to other properties. But certainly if we look at our projected numbers, when you look at the official plan, with the numbers increasing between 900 and 1,200 units in Vienna itself, I think it's essential that we have that before anybody moves forward with looking at what parkland can be taken, I identify or correct that you said it's 3 residential lots and 1 institutional lot. But before that should happen, I would suggest that a strategic plan be put together and determine that, in fact, with the growth for Vienna and any of the other areas, any parkland could be removed, because I would suggest that probably that's not true when you look at the space we have and the potential for an additional 4,700 people. And that's in your official plan, what you've suggested our properties are. I also didn't see parkland identified in the official plan, and I recognize that the developers can pay towards parkland or they can pay in lieu of it. But I also didn't see the discussion of the community monies that can come from the government. I know that there was an assessment done on that in terms of the, forgive me, the development, it's the community benefits that I'm talking about, and the developmental ones, Developmental Charge Act. Sorry, had to look them up. So in terms of both of those, I don't see anything in our official plan regarding those. I know that there are height restrictions and other things like that, but I think we're going blindly into removing parkland. And I think we put the community at risk, any community. I know that it will make money. I understand that, but then we're not actually tapped out for available homes. It's identified that the Bayham average home is 569,000. Certainly doesn't meet the low to moderate number that the new builds are encouraged to do for people. And the other concern is that if you put 4 properties over on the parkland, that has a potential for 64 people. And I know that sounds astounding, but if one looks at the house down below us, it was identified as a semi-detached on on one plot of land that has 2 apartments upstairs and 2 down, but the down apartments, the ones downstairs, are not currently rented. So what that means is if the developer decides to go for separating that one plot of land, he has the potential for 2 apartments up and 2 apartments down on each side, which increases the number of people. And then if you do that 4 times across, you move from 32 people to 64 people. So it would average, if you put 1 up and 1 down in each of those homes, with an average home having 4 people, that's 8 per home, times 4 home is 32 people. So I would suggest that that's a concern, especially on Ann Street. I think that partnerships are essential, but they need to be healthy and respectful with regard to parking. So I would suggest that there needs to be further discussion in terms of ensuring that we have stable, sustainable parking, and not relying on it to be there because it's in a document or whatever, but actually respecting partners and ensuring that parking is available. And if it isn't, providing an option to other residents to come and park. So that could be eventually those 4 lots. I don't know, but I'm suggesting that. I'm also suggesting that if you had to move it in off of Snow Street for further parking, you would be encroaching in the soccer area, which takes away from the potential for use for kids and adults. I would suggest that we don't have in our official plan any indication of recreational. And I'm not being critical. I'm suggesting these things because of concern. If you look at other people's official plans, they have a lot of information about parkland and in terms of recreational sports, what you use it for, bringing people together, mental health. So we don't have that. I haven't found it anywhere. It doesn't seem to be an emphasis. And I think if we're going to grow as a community, it should be an emphasis, especially if we want people to come to live here. And I'm almost done. I'm so sorry. So health promotion. Also, I mentioned that. Okay, so the last one is the optics. So when we talk about Stratfordville versus Eden versus Vienna versus Port Burwell, all of that stuff, none of that should exist. And I would suggest to you that the optics of what happens is that right now Vienna looks like we've lost a lot. Port Burwell, on your past meetings, looks like it could lose a lot, as does Corinth and those other places. And if you look at the optics in terms of what people see as a resident here, it looks like Stratfordville is protected, but everyone else is paying a price. And I would suggest that there needs to be more education provided if that's not what if that's not what council wants the community to see. Transparency is difficult to establish. You go on what you hear and what you see on Facebook. Communication can be somewhat closed in terms of, you do get some comments, but then you can be, what's the word? Anyway, doesn't matter. It's just that the response can be limited. So those are the sorts of things that I wanted to bring forth when you're considering this. I want to thank you for your time, and I wish you well in your decision making.
Thank you very much for your comments, Wendy. Okay. Anyone else wish to attend the podium and speak to this particular issue? All right, seeing none, we will move on then with correspondence. I would note some public comments received on September the 20th. And received by the September 25th, 2024 by Dean Franklin, sent an email. And I assume council's had opportunity to peruse that. I don't see any other business before this public meeting. Which brings us to the adjournment motion. That the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw be considered at a future meeting of council, and that pursuant to the Planning Act requirements, the public meeting for OPA 0324 and ZBA 2424 is now complete at 7:44 p.m. Mover and seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Weisler and Councillor Chilcott. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Returning now to our regular agenda, We left off at 13.1.2 requiring action. Item B, Vienna Alliance parking lot.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this correspondence comes to council after some back and forth with representatives of the Vienna Lions Club regarding the parking lot. So for background, the parking lot and the VCC were formally sold in 2022. And at that time, it was identified by the purchaser that they would be willing to permit use of the parking lot for patrons of the Vienna Community Park. The correspondence before council tonight alludes to their interpretation that there is no explicit permission to use the parking lot. And they are requesting that the municipality provide a certificate of liability insurance to the Lions Club covering the parking lot and enter into a cost-sharing agreement for the parking lot covering matters such as maintenance, snow clearance, and repairs. So based upon that, the information that I can provide council today, and this is information that the Vienna Lions Club has been provided. They still did ask for the correspondence to be on the agenda tonight. This information is based on 2 legal opinions and the opinion of our corporate insurer. The language in the agreement, which I would note that there is an agreement and is registered on title that does permit the use of the Vienna Community Center parking lot for the park, does say may, but that is legally permissive. And that legal agreement is on title, having been signed by 2 representatives, including the current president of the Vienna Lions Club. Based upon that, and since the use of the parking lot is specific to public use and not municipal corporate use, there is no obligation on the part of the municipality to provide a liability certificate for the Vienna Lions Club. They are to provide the level of insurance required for their use and public use. And the municipality is also not obligated to enter into a cost-sharing agreement because the agreement that was entered into back in April of 2022, stemming from the agreement of purchase and sale, does not contemplate cost sharing, does not contemplate any sort of municipal cost requirement for operating or capital needs of the parking lot. Part of divestiture of the asset was to reduce the size of the municipality's non-core portfolio. It would be a 180-degree turn to then essentially take the parking lot back on as an operating and capital matter through a cost-sharing agreement. Staff are not in favor of considering cost sharing at this time. This does not preclude the municipality from reopening the matter at a later date. But at this time, with some of the other pressures before council, staff are not of the opinion that we should not be moving forward with that. And this information was communicated to the Lions Club on the 17th of September. So with that, Mr. Mayor, that's the information that I can provide, and I'm available for questions.
All right, thank you very much for that report, Thomas. Does anyone have any questions regarding this piece of correspondence? Any concerns, comments? Councillor Chilcott.
Just a quick question. We're talking about a parking lot for the park, but are we obligated to provide parking for parks? Because they don't have one in Richmond.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, no, we are not.
Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns? Any direction council can contemplate to give the staff? I don't see any myself. Okay. Oh. Oh. Deputy Mayor Weiser.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Thomas, you made mention of legal opinions and insurer opinion. Has any of that been received in writing and provided to the Vienna Community Center?
The correspondence provided to the Vienna Community Center combines both legal opinions and the insurer's opinion. Given that they are legal opinions, they are privileged and we cannot provide them verbatim.
Counselor Emerson.
Moving forward, I don't want to waste staff's time, so in whatever motion we put forward, if this issue comes up again, can we just refer directly to our solicitor and skip Thomas's valuable time addressing this issue?
I would look for advice on that, considering we'd be paying for that time, whether it's the solicitor or whether we're paying Thomas's time. I guess the one thing to keep in mind is that we do have the legal opinion and the insurer opinion on file. I think it would not be in the practice to directly divulge that from a confidentiality point of view, but you have the opinions that you can refer to should the issue arise again. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I just have to make, I'm sorry, I have to make a comment because again, I don't agree with the way this letter is written because they're talking about us selling off additional park land when we have made this clear many times that the land that we're looking at on Ann Street is not part of the park.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, I am, you know, I'm sympathetic to the fact that yes, the parking lot is going to need maintenance and upkeep, but that was never part of the original agreement. And to make it look like we're stealing land and not offering them something in return is just misuse of the way this is written. So I'm just, yeah, I'm fine with the direction that staff has taken. I thank Thomas for the hard work and leave it at that.
Counselor Froze.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. It would seem that the Lions Club did have a misunderstanding of the whole thing, but would it hurt for us to, as a municipality of Bayham, to make a parking lot donation to the Lions Club once a year, maybe twice a year, maybe once a year of $500, $1,000, and
That's
which they
precedent.
could, it's just does not set precedent. It would be a donation to the Lions Club to help them with the parking lot.
I'm going to look for an opinion, staff on that, but I tend to agree with what the deputy mayor is saying.
Just a couple of points. So when we did sell the VCC, we did provide a donation to the Lions Club, being the former VCC reserve fund. I forget the value off the top of my head, but it was north of $40,000. So just 2 years ago, they received a substantial amount of money to put towards their capital and operating. I can't speak to what they've used those funds for, but I can speak to the accounting, and that's the municipality in good faith providing them with that seed money.
Very good.
I think there's one point to keep in mind as well. Regarding any particular parkland across the municipality or across various other jurisdictions around us, I don't believe there's any municipal obligation to provide parking for any parkland.
But through you, Mr. Mayor, there's a beautiful parking lot right next to it, and we're going to use the public.
Well, that's correct. And the agreement, the purchase agreement.
Great, I agree.
says it's
I've
in there.
heard it. I've heard it.
Absolutely. But we don't provide parking at Memorial Park, both either in Vienna or Port Purple. We
Yeah.
don't provide parking at Richmond.
It was just a thought.
Yep, no, but I appreciate the thought. I'm just trying to point out that there's no municipal obligation to do this. Counselor Chilcott.
Thank you. I'm just going back to when the sale began, and that was brought forward to us, the use of the parking lot. We did not ask for the use of the parking lot. They brought that forward as part of their deal, and it was one of the things that we looked at when deciding on who to sell the VCC to. And at that time, they knew the state of the parking lot and that they would need to keep it up. So, you know, that was the deciding factor, one of them, and price wasn't necessarily the decider on that.
All right, well, thank you for your comments. Oh, Counselor Froze.
All I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Is a little faith goes a long way sometimes. All the time, actually.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Any other discussion? Presently, the motion that is before us, or could be before us, simply states that the correspondence from the Vienna Lines, excuse me, regarding the parking lot be received for information. And if there are no other considerations to be brought forward, then that will be the motion that's put on the floor. Should someone wish to move and second that? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, just wanting to make sure you have communicated with, you mentioned in your report, you've communicated with the Vienna Lions Club, correct?
Yes, and council
Okay.
was also provided that correspondence for information.
Just making sure.
Mhm.
I will move to receive for information.
Do we have a seconder for that? Okay, moved by Deputy Mayor Weisler, seconded by Councillor Chilcott, that the correspondence from the Vienna Lions regarding the parking lot be received for information. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Item C, the Stratford Community Committee regarding request for support. Megan?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to council. The Stratfordville Community Committee submitted a letter for action to request a resolution from council for your support of their Watermelon Fest. We have done this previously, and they use this resolution for submitting for further grants. I believe this one specific through Elgin County. So just looking if you would like to support them to receive for information and say that you support them.
All right, well, thank you very much for that. Any comment, questions? All's quiet. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious if the committee has been successful with grant applications to Elgin in the past.
Yes, right. Yes.
Thank you.
Got over $4,000 from them.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Rose, how many years has the Watermelon Fest been up and running?
6.
Okay, all right. So this was 26th edition. All right, thank you for that. And congratulations to the committee for that. All right, any other questions? Any concerns with offering letter of support? Okay, motion reads that the correspondence from the Stratford Community Committee regarding the request for support be received for information. And the Council for the Corporation of the Municipality of Bayham recognizes that Watermelon Fest is a community festival of municipal significance and fully supports the event. Can I have a mover and seconder for that? Everybody. Let's take one from each side of the room. I'll take Councillor Chilcott and we will take Councillor Froze. All in favor of that? That is carried. Thank you. 13.2, reports to council. Item A, report CAO 4024 by Tom Sayer, CAO, regarding the amended transfer payment agreement, Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Community Culture and Recreation Stream, the Stratford Community Center expansion. Thomas, this has been a long time in getting here.
Yeah, that's the truth. So the report before council tonight is a long time coming. We'll just leave it at that. That's we applied for the rescoping after the April. That's the one. April 6th meeting in 2023, and 17 months later, here we are. So the report before council is an amended transfer payment agreement between us and the ISIP program for the Stratfordville Community Center expansion program. The rescoping identified in the agreement formally removes the covered pavilion, the new concrete pad, and the LED ball diamond lighting from the general scope of work. So this is in line with the project estimates from April 6, 2023 of approximately $2.27 million plus HST and contingencies. This is what council originally directed, so we did get what we asked for. I would note that last fall, council was provided report CAO 6323 that identified some concerns stemming from the lack of word at the time from the ISIP program about where this program and this rescoping sat, and identifying that we had seen as much as a 30% cost increase over the balance of 2023, which identifies an upside risk of approximately $681,000 before tax on that projected amount of money. This was communicated to council, and was also communicated that there were certain reserves that could be utilized should this project eventually go forward, including contingency, road construction, and components of OSIF and gas tax, and the Parkland Reserve. We did reach back out to A-Link based upon this information to see where we're at relative to last fall's cost. And they have advised that relative to 12 months ago, they have seen costs for similar projects level out as there tends to be more competition among their regular bidders, and more bidders are submitting to open tenders. So this is a positive. We believe that if council ultimately chooses to enter into the amending agreement and staff move forward with tendering, that we'd be looking at probably January 2025, which was identified by the architect as best case scenario. Usually with these projects, you look to tender, say, late fall of the year preceding construction or very early in the construction year, to make sure that you're getting out ahead of a lot of the other municipalities that are approving their budget in, say, early construction year, and then getting their own tenders out, which increases competition. I would note that section C 2.0 of the transfer payment agreement speaks to upper level financial contributions. So the amending TPA does not amend this section. So as staff understand it, despite the scope reduction, the funding contribution from the province and federal governments remains unchanged. And this was because when we identified the scope reduction, we identified it specifically due to inflationary pressures. I would note that if we do go forward with a tender, this was identified in one of the previous reports, that section 812 of our procurement policy does note that a tender shall be awarded to the lowest compliant bidder. So there is risk if we move forward to the upside, if we do end up with tenders that are received over and above what cost or price tag is ultimately palatable for the municipality. So council may at that time choose to not proceed with the project due to viability, or may authorize another funding mechanism, such as a short-term debt note, to fund any overage not able to be covered reasonably by reserves. And I would note that wording specifically because since 2023, we do have some other reserve pressures, specifically when it comes to contingency. Council might want to keep that free just in case we're looking at a bit of a higher tax levy increase for 25. Council might want to use the contingency reserve to bring that down a little bit. Road construction is one of those slush reserves we generally use as well. And we like to have a healthy balance in that for road construction projects and overages that are associated with those. So with that, council, the decision is yours. The information is before you. Staff do note that if council is supportive, council may authorize the CAO and the mayor to sign and remit the amending TPA to the ministry. And we'll leave it with you for any discussion.
All right, thank you for that, Thomas. Open it up for discussion. Councilor Emerson.
First question, I have several. I've been told since I joined council that if we enter into a tender that we can't back out of it. So if we sign this tonight, and you, Mr. Mayor, have indicated that we can back out of the tender if we don't like the number we're getting, which story is actually factual?
Okay, first of all, tonight we're talking about the transfer payment agreement. It's not the tender. The tender has yet to even be awarded or even distributed for contemplation. It's not complete.
Oh, but in that language in the letter, isn't there comments about putting it out for tender?
In the
And
report.
the second motion that is being considered tonight? Or did I read it wrong?
It's just to execute the TPA transfer agreement, or the transfer
Well,
payment.
what was the second comment? The second comment was if we choose to put it out for tender. Are
That
we,
was a
deci- are we deciding tonight to put it out for tender?
No, that's not being decided upon tonight. Ultimately,
Well,
if
why is that
council-
language included in your report then?
because council needs to be aware of the implications moving forward should we ultimately tender and there be costs over and above what is reasonably palatable to council. This is also not the first time this information was brought forward. This information was brought forward last fall.
Supplementary, so at this point, what is the estimated over budget amount? Like I see 165% of what original contribution. So what is the estimated dollar amount if we move forward that we have to contribute?
So based upon the information provided to council last fall and the updated high-level information I have today, which is that relative to last year, costs have leveled out. That means that the costs that would have been in place should we attend last fall still apply.
Which
Council
is?
Yes, I'm getting there.
Okay, sorry.
Council authorized a scope reduction to a project of approximately $2.27 million. A 30% overage, which was identified last fall in report CAO 6323, would be an overage of approximately $681,000. So ballpark figure, that's 2.95 if there is a 30% overage. That's the very high end though. And yeah, so council needs to be aware of what that high water mark is.
So that minus the grant, what is that amount?
The grant is 1.47 million approximately. So we're in the ballpark of 1.48.
Plus possible contingency.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Additional questions?
Yep.
Councilor Emerson.
It's a comment and then a question. I hearken back to when the accountant presented, our fiscal year end, and I thought it was positive, but I pretty much publicly got scolded that I interpreted that wrong and that we need to, carry on the path of austerity. And further to that, when we talked about paying off the sub debt, and I suggested that a few $100,000 left over and not to sell the lots wasn't the biggest deal in the world because interest is going to be changing. But we insist on being austerity, and now this project comes forward, and with the overage of like 1.5 million, possibly more, all of a sudden we're not on the path of austerity. So I wonder and I question. And thinking about Wendy Carmichael's comments about optics, if this is even appropriate to consider. And I would just like clarification because sometimes I sit in council and I think we're damn near bankrupt and then next time we're flush. So I kind of wonder if I'm not wondering, I think it's inconsistent what we say our financial position is depending what the project is we're talking about.
Thomas.
And I need clarity on that issue because I can see why people think what they think, quite honestly.
Just before council gets to the councilor's question, I just want to clarify that it's not a $1.48 million overage. It's $1.4 million over the funding that we're to receive from the province and the federal government. The total grant amount was $2.003 million. So we've got to allocate that $535,000 or whatever that remainder happens to be as the municipality's component. And we currently have that in the facilities reserve. We also have some money available in the parkland reserve should council opt to use that for the accessible pathway. So there are some components of the project that we do have money for in reserve. The ultimate overage identified in the report is approximately $681,000.
Well, I just asked earlier, what is the high side, what is the grant, and what is the difference? And you said $1.45 million.
Yes,
And
because
now you're saying $500,000 is the amount we have to contribute.
Yes, because the grant is what we get from the federal and provincial governments. That's $1.47 million for a project that's $2.003 million. We're required to fund the municipality's component, which is 26.67%, which is approximately $530,000. We have that money in reserve right now. Any overage then also has to be funded by the municipality. But the grant that we get through the ISIP program is $1.47 million.
Okay,
Just
I
wish
think,
it-
I think there was a little bit,
Well, it's not
confusion.
clear. It's
No,
not
I
clear.
understand that, Counselor, and what I'm trying to get at is when the descoping exercise went through in April of 2023, we descoped it from a 2.9, which was the inflated due to inflationary pressures from 2019, back to a program that was somewhere just a little over 2 million, 2.2. And that included contingencies.
That does not include.
That does not
contingency,
include
no.
contingency. All right, 2.2. So based on Class D estimates from A-Link, we don't have the tenders out there. We don't know what the actual cost is going to be. We have some pretty good estimates. And so as staff are telling you, we have 530,000 roughly sitting in the reserve. If there's an overage above that 2.2, then we are responsible for funding that should council choose to go forward. Yeah. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. So we've already received a report that's stating that we are potentially looking at a 30% overage. Right?
Possibly.
So we're at 530 plus 30%. And we're high level guessing that that has leveled out. So in the event we go to tender, we're looking at another 30% on top of the 530. Just curious as to where that money's coming from. I know you say we have reserves that we could utilize to cover that overage, but I'm concerned about emptying all reserves just to cover one project.
Again, Deputy Mayor, just to clarify, you're basing the potential overage on Class D estimates. We do not have marketplace estimates. That's what you get from the tendering process.
Thank you through
That we
you, Mr.
can't
Mayor.
back-
Supplementary there. So, and I agree, that's correct. You're right. We don't have that information in front of us, but I'm uncomfortable making a decision until we do. So
Which decision though, Deputy Mayor, is what I want to ask. Tonight, we're not asking you to approve a tender. We're asking you to authorize the signing of a TPA, transfer agreement.
supplementary, if we agree to a TPA, does that not agree to the project?
No,
But you're making an agreement,
with the federal government, the
right, to
province.
accept the grant.
And through you, Mr. But when we sign that, are we committed to go through the tendering process? I guess that's the question. And then the next question is, I've been told at least 5 times that if we enter a tenders process, we can't back out. So if we sign that agreement, are we foregone conclusion that we have to go to the tendering process to find out how much it's going to cost that we now can't back out of?
The logical progression, if you decide to sign the TPA tonight, is to go through the tendering process and find out what that cost is. Staff have identified in this particular report that should the project or council choose not to proceed because of financial viability, council can opt out.
Well, that's contrary to everything I've been told about the tendering process up to this date. That's my concern, because I've been told that once we tender, we can't back out. We have to honor the lowest bidder. So is that true or not true?
I don't know where you've been getting the information, but
In council,
That's true. It's right in the report.
all of us understand that way. And then we're being told this time that we can back out of these things. Have we not been told that, or are my meds out of whack or something?
I wouldn't comment on your meds being out of whack. Thomas, do you have an answer for that before we proceed to Councillor Chilcott?
Give me 30 seconds.
All right, if you need some more time for research on that, or I can go to Counselor Chilcott.
Okay, I'm good.
All right.
So the section in the report that I brought back to council regarding the procurement policy is almost verbatim the information received in report CAO 6323 last fall. It says that an award shall be made to the lowest compliant bidder. Correct. So risk exists to the municipality in a tender process because if there are a reasonable cost estimate and a bid is awarded, it could be higher or lower. This report is clear that if it is higher and indeed too high for council's appetite upon consideration of the bids, council may choose at that time to not proceed with the project due to financial viability. There is a TPA in place and council financially does not have the appetite to move forward. It is essentially in a position to return the funds to ISIP and the project ends, or the project has to go through another substantial rescoping because we can't then just issue a tender 6 months later. That's price shopping. We can't do that. A lot of this information council did receive last fall. So there's nothing in here that is appreciably different from that information.
Okay. Counselor Chilcott.
Thank you. I agree with Counselor Emerson. It did sound as though if we went out to tender, we had to take it. But I think now that I've heard it again, I was thinking that we had to take it based on the lowest. What you're saying is we have to take the lowest bid, but we don't have to take any bid. Is that correct?
If you are to award it, you have to take the lowest bid in a tender.
Right.
But if you don't award a tender because of financial availability, then council does have the ability to do that as well. The difference is with something like an RFP, for instance, a request for proposal, council does not have to select the lowest bid with an RFP. It can choose what it wants to pick. A tender is supposed to be issued with very stringent technical requirements that must be met to satisfy that tender, which is why the wording in procurement policies in general is that if you are to award, you shall award to the lowest compliant bidder.
Correct. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
what the issue was when you were saying we must award it to the lowest bidder, that extra step wasn't taken to say, unless we can't afford to, and then we don't have to award it to anyone. But when we're looking at it and we're going to award it, it must go to the lowest bidder. Am I correct?
Yes.
Is that how you understood it?
Yeah. Through you, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm sure even when we were discussing things like fire equipment and everything, that if we tendered it, we can't say we don't want to buy it anymore. So I know for a fact that we've said that more than one occasion, but now it seems like, oh, well, we can. So in the past, were we saying that we couldn't back out of agreement? Is that statement not true, or is this? It's just weird. It's just weird because I know that that's been said more than once on different issues, not just this one. Is it because it's equipment and not a capital, like a fixed asset, or what it is? It just seems like the language is changing depending on the circumstance. I'm sure I'm not imagining it. I guess I should have went through all the minutes and all the stuff about tenders and dragged that language out, but I'm sure I haven't lost my mind.
All right. So Counselor Emerson, if we go back and we think about your fire equipment or rolling stock procurement or apparatus, if you will, we did accept a tender process at that point. Now realizing that those tenders are 2 years out before they're fulfilled. So we are obligated to that pricing. See, we accepted before the order went in, correct, Chief? Well, went through an RFP process. Okay, but still the point is we obligated ourselves to that apparatus. At this point, we have not even issued the tender, let alone accepted a tender. We're contemplating whether we sign the TPA agreement to move forward. And then the next logical step would be to issue a tender. But just because you issue the tender does not necessarily mean that you must accept the lowest bid. As Thomas has tried to identify here, if you're going to accept a bid, you accept the lowest bid or you accept no bid. But you don't reissue 6 months down the road because that is improper.
Okay, so another point of clarification, if you will, please.
Mhm.
If we sign that agreement, does that, you said the logical step, but that automatically forces us to go to a tender? That's a difference between a logical step and saying that we have to go to tender. That's not the same thing. Logical step and required to are two different things. That's one point that I was trying to clarify, but still hasn't been clarified.
Why would we sign the TPA if we weren't thinking of proceeding? Or at least going down the road of further investigation? That's the point I was trying to make here.
Yeah, but that's not my question. My question is, are we obliged to?
No, we are still not obliged to accept a tender which we have not issued. But this is the first step. You know, you consider the fact that this is 17 months after we have already submitted a descoping application. This is the first opportunity that we have been awarded this particular grant. And we know that the project is too big for us to take on without the assistance of upper level government. We didn't get the grant, we probably wouldn't proceed with the project. We have an opportunity now to exercise that TPA to proceed on to the next step, which is issue the tender, find out what the correct construction costs are going to be. And then make the decision from there. Have I misstepped somewhere?
No, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. If we're in a TPA and we're going to do the project by the deadline, then at some point in time, we have to go through procurement. And the most logical way to go through with a project of this size is through a tender. That is the next step. So by authorizing the TPA, then we can reach out to A-Link and we can say, hey, we're back on board. Council's authorized the descoping and we can move forward. If there's no TPA signed, officially, there's no descoping approved. We need the agreement signed to really move forward. Otherwise, we'd be expected to move forward with the project as originally awarded.
Councillor Chilcott.
So I just want to clarify, if we move to sign the TPA, then we are also going to go for tender. We're not committed to anything that's submitted to us, but we're going to do the tender process, correct?
That's my understanding. Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure because I think that's what Tim's trying to decide, figure out is, does the TPA and then nothing, or is it TPA and we automatically go to tender? I'm saying we automatically go to tender because that's the next step. After that, we have to decide what we're going to do with those.
If it
tenders.
makes it easier, say the next step is procurement.
No.
It doesn't make it easier?
No.
Well, there are many forms of procurement, whether it's an RFP, whether it's a request for a tender. Okay. But this is a technical building, and the step was considered tendering would be the way to go.
Correct. I just wanted to make
Yep.
sure that signing the TPA means we're going to go out for tender. It does not mean we're going to accept any of the tenders.
No,
Okay.
not at this point.
So then I would like to move that we sign the TPA. Find out
So,
where we are and continue. Once we know what the numbers are, then we can make an informed decision.
all right, thank you for that. Not cutting off any discussion, further questions? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. For clarity, I am under the impression that the work on this project does not have to be completed until 2027. Is that correct?
Substantial completion, yes.
Supplementary, if the if we're seeing some consistency and leveling out of costs, is there potential for cost savings if we wait?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the deputy mayor, there, at least for the first 2 years where we had the transfer payment agreement, we were working through the process, we were seeing relatively large increase to costs. We haven't seen, or I haven't been advised of a deflation, for any deflationary pressure to construction costs. Leveling out is the information that I have at this time. I don't have anything deflationary, so there hasn't been a reduction. I can't speak to what the future may or may not hold. I don't have that crystal ball, but I would say that the probability of there being market deflation is relatively low. The best case scenario would be a leveling out of prices over a longer period of time. But then again, I don't have that crystal ball. I don't know what the future holds.
Anyone else? Counselor Emerson.
When is the deadline for signing this agreement with the upper tiers of government? Immediately? Or
There is no specific deadline, but we can't move forward with an approved scope reduction until we have a signed agreement. So if council wants to defer and wants to discuss further, council can certainly do so. Staff will do whatever council directs, but staff won't be proceeding with any detailed design work until we have a signed TPA.
Which means no further information.
Well,
Deputy Mayor.
thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think that's where I'm getting caught up, is the frustrating piece is that you need the TPA in order to get the costing, but is there any other way to get costing?
The primary way is to bring down the class of the estimate. So we've been working off Class D estimates for the majority of this period. And when everything was paused ultimately in 2023, because we were getting out of a reasonable procurement period and we're getting delayed for the rescoping, everything was paused. We've got approximately 15% of the construction documents done at this point in time, but there's still quite a bit of work to do. And until we have a detailed design in place that the architect and staff can agree upon based upon council's direction and the granting authorities project description to move forward to tender, we can't bring that cost estimate down. We're still going to be working with a 30% contingency on any estimates just to account for discrepancies.
Okay, anything further? Okay. We do have a draft motion. I'll read it, see if there's a mover and seconder. That report CAO 40/24 regarding amending transfer payment agreement, investing in Canada infrastructure program, community, culture, and recreation stream, Stratfordville Community Center expansion be received for information. And that council authorizes the CAO and mayor to execute an amending transfer payment agreement between His Majesty the King in Right of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Infrastructure and the Municipality of Bayham for the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, ICIP, Community, Culture, and Recreation Stream. Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Chilcott. Do we have a seconder?
Point of clarification, Mr. Mayor?
Point of clarification.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really at a crossroads because I want to know what the costing is. So the only way to do that is to do this process. So I'm going to second it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Again, I clarify, this does not obligate the municipality to proceeding with the project. This is simply the next step. and getting those costing estimates for you. Does that make sense? Is that clear? Okay. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Okay, that is carried. You. Brings us to section 14, the bylaws. We have three bylaws. We have bylaw number 2024-058, being a bylaw respecting the municipal water supply system in the municipality of Bayham and the establishment of water rates. Bylaw number 2024-059, being a bylaw respecting the municipal pollution control system and the municipal stormwater system in the municipality of Bayham and establishing of sewer surcharge rates. And item C, bylaw number Z 791, 2024, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z 456, 2003 as amended, prose. Any questions on the bylaws? The motion reads that bylaws numbers 2024-058, 2024-059, and Z 791, 2024 be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed. Do we have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Chilcott, Deputy Mayor Weisler, all in favor? That's carried. I don't believe there's any unfinished business, but we do have other business, an in-camera session. That council do now rise and into an in-camera session at 8:31 PM to discuss confidential item regarding a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to municipality or local boards, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group, or persons or organization. It's an agreement. And item B, a confidential item regarding a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, municipal property. Mover and seconder, Deputy Mayor Weisler and Councillor Chilcott, all in favor. And that is carried. Recess.